The key stuck. Emma twisted until her wrist burned and the lock finally gave in with a shriek of metal on metal. The doors swung inward. Stale air. Dust. Underneath it, something rotting fruit in a bowl somewhere, or the house itself. Her grandmother's cottage. Small and dim and utterly silent. Her mobile rang before she dragged the first box inside. "I'm here, Jess. Don't hang up on me." Her friend's voice was tight. "We need to talk about what's happening." "I'm unpacking." "Not much to discuss. You quit your job without telling anyone. You ended things with David. He ended things. And now you're hiding in a dead woman's house." Emma's hand clenched around the phone. "Say that again." Silence. Then, quieter, "I didn't mean." "You did." Emma's voice came out flat. "You meant exactly that. Dead woman's house. Because that's what it is, isn't it? Not my grandmother's cottage. Not where I spent summers as a child. Just a dead woman's house, and I'm the disaster granddaughter who comes to pick through the remains. Emma, I'm worried about you. Everyone's worried. No one's helping. What do you want me to?" She ended the call. Stood in the hallway with her heart slamming against her ribs and her throat closing. The cottage pressed in, stopped clock, faded furniture, her grandmother's cardigan draped over a chair like she'd just stepped out for the garden. 6 months. The cardigan had been there 6 months. Emma went to the kitchen. Filled the kettle on muscle memory. Flipped the switch. Nothing. She tried the lights. Dead. Perfect. The fuse box was under the stairs. Emma found it, stared at switches that might as well have been ancient runes, and flipped the main. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Her hands started shaking. Not cold. Rage. At the house, at herself, at the fact that she'd driven 2 hours to hide in a place she didn't know how to fix because everywhere else felt like it was burning down. Emma opened it to find a man with a casserole dish. Tall, dark-haired, flower on his jumper. Smiling like he was doing her a favor. "Hi. Lucas. Next door." He held up the dish. "Saw your car, thought you might not have. Power's out." The smile faltered. "Right. I can look at it if." "Did you know my grandmother?" "Yes." She was. "How well?" He blinked. "Sorry. How?" "Well. Did you know her?" She used to bring me herbs. From her garden. We'd talk sometimes." "About what?" Lucas shifted the casserole. "Gardening mostly. Recipes." "Why?" Just curious what she told strangers about her life, whilst her granddaughter couldn't be bothered to visit. His expression changed. Not pity. Something closer to alarm. "I'm sure she didn't. Everyone knew her, apparently. The whole bloody town. Meanwhile, I came twice last year. Twice. So I'm wondering what she said about that. Whether she made excuses or just told the truth." "She never said anything bad about you." "That's worse." Emma heard her voice rising and couldn't stop it. "Don't you see? That's so much worse." She should have been furious. She should have told everyone what a selfish bitch her granddaughter was. But she didn't, because she was kind, and now she's dead and I can't. She stopped. Breathing hard. Lucas stood on the step holding his stupid casserole and looking at her like she was something broken he didn't know how to fix. "The power," he said carefully. "Do you want me to?" "Fine. Whatever." He came inside. Moved to the fuse box without asking where it was because of course he knew. Of course he'd been here before, probably had tea at this table, probably heard all Rosa's stories about her garden and her life and her disappointing granddaughter who was too important in the city to come home. There. Lucas stood, brushing dust off his hands. The immersion heater tripped it. "I should work now." The lights came on. "I got sacked." "You said you quit." "I quit before they could sack me. Turns out I was rubbish at the job. Rubbish at the relationship. Rubbish at being the granddaughter who visits before it's too late." Emma felt something crack in her chest. So all those articles she kept? They were fiction. Just like the idea that I was someone worth being proud of. Lucas stared at her. "You can't actually believe that." "Can't I? Your grandmother loved you." "My grandmother died alone because I was too busy to drive 2 hours on a weeknight." The words came out like glass. "She had a stroke in this kitchen. Fell by the stove. The neighbor, you, probably, found her the next day." So don't stand there and tell me about love when what she needed was someone who gave a damn enough to show up. The silence was enormous. Lucas's jaw worked. When he spoke, his voice was different, harder, colder. You're right. I found her. I called the ambulance. I went to the hospital and sat with her because there was no one else. He set the casserole down on the counter with a sharp crack of ceramic on the tile. She asked for you. Keep asking. I told her you were on your way. She died believing that. Emma felt the floor drop out from under her. She died believing you were coming, Lucas said again, quietly. So you're right. You don't deserve her kindness. And you sure as hell don't deserve her silence. He walked out. The door didn't slam. It closed softly, which was somehow worse. Emma stood in the bright kitchen with the lights humming and her pulse roaring in her ears. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to grip the counter. She asked for you. The casserole sat where he'd left it. She lifted the lid with numb fingers. Ratatouille. Overcooked, swimming in liquid, too much salt. She took a bite and tasted nothing but the bitter residue of too many mistakes. Because she ate it standing and it was there, and because punishing herself was easier than admitting Lucas was right. Her grandmother's apron hung by the stove. Her recipe box sat on the counter, the painted lid faded but intact. Through the window, the garden sprawled overgrown, roses strangling themselves, herbs gone to seed, everything desperately trying to grow in the absence of the woman who'd tended it. Emma looked down at the empty casserole dish and felt the full weight of it. She'd come here to hide, to escape the wreckage of her life in London, to avoid the questions she couldn't answer. Instead, she'd found worse wreckage. The kind she'd made herself by staying away, by prioritizing work over phone calls, by convincing herself there would always be more time. She asked for you. Emma set down the dish. Her reflection stared back from the darkened window, pale, hollow-eyed, unrecognizable. Tomorrow she'll unpack. Tomorrow she'd figure out what to do with this house, this guilt, this anger that had nowhere left to go except inward. Tonight, she stood in her dead grandmother's kitchen and learned what it felt like when someone finally told you the truth you'd been running from. It didn't set you free. It buried you. Emma didn't sleep. She lay in her grandmother's bed and stared at the ceiling until gray light crept through the curtains. Then she got up, dressed in yesterday's clothes, and went downstairs because staying still felt suffocating. The kitchen looked smaller in the morning light. The empty casserole dish sat on the counter where she'd left it, accusing. She asked for you. Emma shoved it in the sink and turned away. She needed to move. To do something. The cottage was hers now, every cupboard, every drawer, every accumulated year of her grandmother's life packed into rooms Emma barely recognized. She could sort through it. Sell it. Burn it. Anything except standing still. Cupboards at random. She pulled out chipped mugs and mismatched plates. Rose's modest china. The sugar bowl Emma had broken as a child, glued back together, the cracks yellowed with age. She set it aside and kept digging. The drawer beside the stove stuck. Emma yanked it hard, wooden spoons, a rusted whisk, spatulas with melted edges tumbled forward. And underneath, wedged at the back, a book. A cookbook. Old, cloth-bound, the covers stained soft with years of handling. No title. Just gray fabric worn smooth in the center where hands had held it. Emma pulled it out. I opened it. The pages were thick, some torn, others reinforced with tape. Handwritten recipes in her grandmother's slanted script, mixed with newspaper clippings, pasted haphazardly across the margins. Victoria sponge. Beef Wellington. Lemon posset. Measurements in ounces and gills, ingredients from another era. But it was the notes that stopped her. In the margins, between recipes, in blank spaces at the bottom of pages, small annotations in faded ink. Some practical, needs more salt. Too dry. Better with cream. Others are different. Emma flipped pages at random and landed on a strawberry tart. The clipping was yellowed, torn from a magazine decades ago. Beside it, in her grandmother's younger hand, neater than Emma remembered, a single line. Strawberry tart. Made this the night he told me about Paris. I almost said yes. R.C. June 1965. Emma's breath caught. I almost said yes. Her grandmother had married in 1967. Emma had seen the photograph her entire life, Rose in a modest dress, her grandfather solemn beside her, both young and unsmiling outside a registry office. June 1965 was 2 years before that. She turned the page. Coco Vin with a note underneath. He played in the square tonight. The whole town stopped to listen. I couldn't breathe. R. July 1965. Another page. He said I was magic. I wanted to believe it. R. August 1965. The notes continued, scattered through the book like secrets. Never a name. Just he and him and dates that stopped abruptly in September 1965. Then nothing. Pages of recipes with no annotations. Until. Married today. Made lemon cake for the breakfast after. It was fine. Everything will be fine. R.C. March 1967. Emma's hands were shaking. She flipped forward, scanning pages. First anniversary. John bought flowers. Tulips. He remembered. I should be grateful. I am grateful. R. March 1968. Further. Emma was born today. 7 pounds 2 ounces. John's eyes. My mother's nose. I will be better at this than I was at choosing. R. November 1970. Emma froze at her own name. Read the line again. I will be better at this than I was at choosing. She turned pages faster now, looking for more. Found them tucked between recipes for Sunday roasts and Christmas puddings. Emma's first birthday. Made her a cake. She smashed her fist into it and laughed. John said she has my stubbornness. He has no idea. R. November 1971. Emma asked why I don't sing anymore. Told her I'd forgotten the words. The look on her face, like I'd failed her. Maybe I have. R. June 1979. And then, decades later, the handwriting shakier. Emma rang from London. Too busy to visit this month. I told her it was fine. I'm always telling everyone everything is fine. 60 years of fine. What a waste. R. April 2024. The words blurred. Emma set the cookbook down, stepped back from it. That was 8 months ago. 2 months before the stroke. Rose had written that 2 months before she died, asking for Emma, believing she was coming. What a waste. Emma picked up the book again with numb fingers. Flipped back to the early pages, to the summer of 1965 when her grandmother's handwriting was young and desperate. September 1965, tucked beside a recipe for apple crumble. He left today. No goodbye. Just gone. The room where he stayed is empty. I went there and stood in it like a fool, waiting for something that will never come back. Everyone says I'll forget. They're wrong. R. September 1965. And below it, added later in different ink. I didn't forget. I just learned to stop saying his name. R. 1983. Emma closed the book. I opened it again. Couldn't stop turning pages. Couldn't stop reading the breadcrumb trail of a life she'd never known her grandmother had lived. A whole person. A whole history of wanting and choosing and resigning herself to fine. And Emma, too busy, too important, too wrapped up in her own collapsing life, had never asked. Had never noticed. Had visited twice a year and called it enough. She found one more note near the end of the book. Recently. The handwriting is shakier but unmistakable. I made a strawberry tart today. First time in years. It still tastes like regret. Some recipes you can't fix, no matter how many times you try. R. May 2024. 1 month before she died. Emma set the cookbook on the counter and stared at it. Her throat was tight, her chest ached, and somewhere underneath the guilt was something worse. Recognition. I almost said yes. Everything will be fine. What a waste. Her grandmother had spent 60 years convincing herself she'd made the right choice. Had built a decent life, raised a daughter, kept a garden, made perfect cakes. Had been kind and steady and uncomplaining whilst carrying the weight of someone she'd loved and let go. And Emma? Emma had quit her job. Ended her relationship. Driven 2 hours to hide in this cottage because facing her own life felt impossible. I will be better at this than I was at choosing. Emma's hands were shaking. She shoved the cookbook back in the drawer, then pulled it out again. Grandmother's handwriting, young Rose, middle-aged Rose, elderly Rose, all trapped in the margins of recipes, speaking to no one. She thought of Lucas, of the anger in his voice when he'd said you don't deserve her silence. He was right. But the worst part, the part that made Emma's chest feel like it was caving in, was realizing her grandmother had spent a lifetime in her own version of silence. Had swallowed her regrets and called it maturity. Had made peace with fine because being brave felt impossible. And now Emma was standing in that same kitchen, running from that same question. What happens when you're too afraid to say yes? She didn't close the cookbook this time. Just left it open on the counter, Rose's words exposed to the morning light, and walked out of the kitchen because reading more felt like looking in a mirror she wasn't ready to face. 2 days passed. Emma didn't leave the cottage. She sat at the kitchen table with the cookbook open, turning pages, reading notes, tracing her grandmother's handwriting like it might confess something new. It didn't. But she couldn't stop. I almost said yes. What a waste. Some recipes you can't fix. On the third morning, she woke with her cheek pressed to a page, neck stiff, and realized she'd fallen asleep at the table. She was out of milk, out of bread, out of everything except toast and guilt. The market was small, tucked at the end of the high street. Emma grabbed a basket and moved through the aisles without thinking bread, eggs, milk. Then vegetables. She was staring at courgettes when she saw him. Lucas. Across the produce section, examining tomatoes. Emma's first instinct was to turn and leave. But her feet wouldn't move, and he was already watching her with an expression that wasn't anger or warmth. Just wariness. She clutched the cookbook tighter. She'd brought it without thinking. Now it felt like evidence. Lucas. Too loud. Wait. He stopped. Didn't come closer. Didn't leave. Emma. A woman pushed past with a trolley. Somewhere a child screamed. Emma's pulse hammered against the cookbook pressed to her ribs. I was horrible to you. The words came fast. You were being kind and you were grieving, Lucas said. Flat. I get it. No. You don't. Emma's throat tightened. I wasn't grieving. I was running. Silence. Lucas waited. Emma held out the cookbook. I found this. It's hers, Rose's. There are notes. About someone. Before my grandfather. She flipped it open, hands shaking, and found the strawberry tart. Held it so he could see. Look. Lucas took the book. Read the note. I almost said yes. His eyebrows rose. He looked at her. There are dozens, Emma said. A whole summer. Someone she loved. Then he's gone and she married my grandfather 2 years later and spent 60 years being fine about it. Her voice cracked on the last word. Lucas was quiet, studying the page. She mentioned this once, he said finally. Said it held her whole heart. I thought she meant the recipes. She did. Just not the way I thought. Lucas turned a page. Read another note. Then another. His expression shifted curiosity, recognition, something softer that disappeared when he looked back at Emma. Why does this matter? The question was sharp. Understand who she was. Emma flinched. The real her. Not the version I saw twice a year. Why? Emma opened her mouth. I closed it. The truth stuck in her throat like glass. Because I failed her. Because I'm terrified I'm her. There's a recipe, she said instead, desperate. Tarte Tatin. The last ingredient is smudged and I can't read it. I don't know how to make anything in here, but she stopped. Swallowed. I need to try. Lucas stared at her. The silence stretched so long Emma thought he'd hand the book back and walk away. Then he sighed. Ran a hand through his hair. I close at 6. Come by tomorrow. Bring that. Relief hit her so hard she felt dizzy. Thank you. I don't deserve. No. Lucas's voice cut clean. You don't. But Rose did. We'll do this for her. Not for you. The words landed like a slap. Emma nodded. Couldn't speak. Lucas turned to go. Stopped. I looked back. The ingredient. Probably brandy. A pause. Rose used to say a proper Tarte Tatin needed brandy and nerve. She had both. Then he walked away. Emma stood alone in the produce section, clutching the cookbook, heart pounding. We'll do this for her. Not for you. Not forgiveness. Not even a truce. A ceasefire built on the memory of someone who deserved better from both of them. Emma looked down at the cookbook. At Rose's careful script. At 60 years of quiet regret folded between recipes. Brandy and nerves. Rose had made her choices. Had lived with them. Had swallowed every bit of wanting and called it maturity. Emma wasn't like her grandmother. Didn't have her patience. Her grace. Her ability to make peace with fine. But maybe she could learn something else.
Ingredients for Tarte Tatin,
apples, butter, sugar, brandy, and walked back to the cottage with the cookbook pressed to her chest. Tomorrow at 6. Heart and Soul. She'd be there. Emma arrived at Heart and Soul at 6:15. Late, because she'd changed her shirt 3 times and hated herself for it. The cafe was closed, chairs stacked on tables, lights dimmed except for the kitchen at the back. Through the window she could see Lucas moving between counter and stove, setting out bowls and measuring cups with the methodical focus of someone who'd rather be doing anything else. She knocked. He looked up, saw her, and jerked his head towards the side door. Emma let herself in. The cafe smelled of coffee and bread and something sweet she couldn't name. Lucas didn't smile. You're late. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be on time. He gestured to the workspace he'd cleared, a long steel counter with ingredients laid out in neat rows. Butter, sugar, flour, eggs. Fresh strawberries in a colander. We're making the tart. The one from June 1965. Emma set the cookbook down carefully, like it might shatter. Okay, Lucas echoed. He tied an apron, tossed her another. Put that on. She did. The apron was too big, the strings tangled. Lucas watched her struggle with it for 3 seconds, then turned away and started measuring flour. Just tell me what to do, Emma said. Lucas stopped. I looked at her. That's not how this works. I don't know how to cook. I know. But cooking isn't about following orders. You have to feel it. He pushed the bowl of flour towards her. We're making pastry. Add butter. Work it with your hands until it looks like breadcrumbs. Emma stared at the butter. How much?
It's the only
Enough.
answer. That's
Lucas's
not an
voice
answer.
was patient in a way that felt like effort. You'll know when it's right. Start. Emma picked up the butter. Cut it into chunks. Dropped them into the flour and started pressing with her fingertips. Too hard. The butter smeared instead of breaking. Lighter, Lucas said. You're strangling it. I'm not. You are. Stop thinking and just do it. Emma's jaw tightened. She tried again. Too tentative this time. The butter stayed in chunks. Lucas sighed. Moved behind her. Like this. He reached around, took her hands in his, and guided them through the motion, quick, light touches that broke the butter into the flour. His hands were warm, rough with calluses, and Emma went rigid. Relax, Lucas said. His voice was close to her ear. It's just pastry. It wasn't just pastry. It was him standing too close, his chest nearly against her back, his hands on hers, and the acute awareness that 2 days ago he'd told her she didn't deserve his help. There. Lucas stepped back. See? Breadcrumbs. Emma looked down. He was right. The mixture had transformed, crumbly, pale, exactly like breadcrumbs. Now add water. Slowly. Bring it together into a dough. She did. Too much water. The dough went sticky and slack. Damn it. Add flour, Lucas said. He wasn't mocking her. Just stating facts. Fix it. Emma added flour. Kneaded it in. Her hands were covered in dough, her frustration rising with every sticky, stubborn clump. But slowly, painfully, it came together. Smooth. Elastic. Real. Good, Lucas said. Now rest it. 30 minutes. He took the dough, wrapped it, and put it in the fridge. Returned to the counter and started hulling strawberries with swift, precise cuts. Emma washed her hands. The silence felt heavy. Do you know anything about 1965?
Lucas
She
didn't
asked.
look up. Who rose
No.
me back then?
She never mentioned anyone. She wrote about someone. A lot. He played music. She made him soufflé. Doesn't ring a bell. Is there anyone in town who might remember? Someone who was here then. Lucas paused. Set down the knife. My grandfather. He's lived here his whole life. 92 and still sharp as anything. If someone played music in the square 60 years ago, he'd remember. Hope flared in Emma's chest. Could I talk to him? Maybe. Lucas returned to the strawberries. If you ask nicely. The barb landed. Emma swallowed it. They worked in silence, Lucas making the filling, Emma watching, trying to learn. He moved with economy, no wasted motion, and she envied the ease of it. The certainty. When the dough had rested, he handed it to her with a rolling pin. Roll it out. Thin. Even. Emma tried. The dough stuck to the counter. She added flour. Rolled again. One side too thick, the other too thin. Christ, she muttered. Lucas came over. Took the pin. Demonstrated with 3 smooth strokes. Pressure here, ease there, turn, repeat. Made it look effortless. Now you. Emma tried again. The dough tore. I can't do this. Yes, you can. Stop trying to control it and just. The dough tore again. Emma threw down the rolling pin. It clattered across the counter. I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't do anything right. Not this, not my job, not my grandmother, not. Emma. She stopped. I looked at him. Lucas's expression was unreadable. Pick up the pin. What? Pick it up. Start again. It's ruined. It's pastry. Knead it back together and start again. That's what you do when it breaks. Emma stared at him. At the dough. At her flour-covered hands. She picked up the dough. Kneaded it. Rolled it again. This time it held. Lucas said nothing. Just nodded and stepped back. They finished the tart, pastry pressed into the tin, strawberries arranged in careful circles, the whole thing baked until golden.
Were uneven.
It wasn't
One
perfect. Side slightly burned. But it was real. Emma took it out of the oven, and the smell hit her butter, sugar, fruit, summer. Let it cool, Lucas said. Then try it. They waited. 5 minutes felt like an hour. Then Lucas cut 2 slices, plated them, and handed one to Emma. She took a bite. Sweetness. Tartness. The buttery crumble of the pastry. Something else underneath, warmth, nostalgia, the ghost of a season she'd never lived. This tastes like. Emma closed her eyes. Like being young. Like summer. When she opened them, Lucas was watching her. Something had shifted in his expression, less guarded, more curious. That's what good food does, he said quietly. Take you somewhere else. Emma set down the plate. Her throat felt tight. I'm sorry, she said. Really. For everything I said. The way I treated you. You didn't deserve that. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. We'll figure out Rose's story, he said. Together. For her. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. Just a conditional agreement built on shared purpose. Emma nodded. Together. That night, Emma sat at the kitchen table with the cookbook open, reading by lamplight. More notes she'd missed before, tucked in margins and between recipes. His favorite, chocolate soufflé. Made it every Sunday that golden summer. July 1965. Apple crumbles. The last thing I cooked before he left. I couldn't eat it. Gave it to the neighbor's children. September 1965. On one page, a photo corner was pasted 4 small triangles meant to hold a picture. But the photo was gone. Removed, or lost, or deliberately taken. Emma traced the empty space with one finger. At the back of the book, she found something she'd missed. A recipe in her grandmother's handwriting, different from the others. No clipping, no printed text. Just Rose's script,
perfect
careful
day.
and deliberate. The ingredients were simple, almost childlike. Morning sun through kitchen windows. Fresh bread, still warm. Music from the square. His laugh. Strawberries from the market. A walk by the river. His hand in mine. And then, at the end, one final ingredient. Scratched out. Illegible beneath the heavy black lines Rose had drawn through it. Emma squinted. Hold the page up to the light. I tried to make out the words beneath. She couldn't. But below the crossed out line, in shakier handwriting, added later, years later, Rose had written. The one ingredient I couldn't find. 1983. Emma set the book down. I stared at it. A recipe for a perfect day. A list of small, ordinary things that had mattered to someone. And one ingredient, the crucial one, that Rose had scratched out and never named. Emma's chest ached. She thought of the tart she'd made tonight. Imperfect, uneven, but real. The taste of summer and youth and wanting. She thought of Lucas's hands on hers, guiding her through pastry. The way he'd told her to start again when it broke. That's what you do when it breaks. Emma turned back to the recipe. To the crossed-out ingredient. To the empty photo corners and the notes about someone Rose had loved and lost. Her grandmother had spent 60 years carrying this. Had scratched out the one thing she'd wanted most and called it moving on. Emma closed the cookbook. But she didn't put it away. Tomorrow, she'd ask Lucas about his grandfather. Tomorrow, she'll keep looking. Tonight, she sat in the kitchen her grandmother had died in and wondered what ingredient was worth crossing out. What you wanted so badly you couldn't even bear to name it. Emma walked back to the cottage with the taste of strawberries still on her tongue. The kind that made her breath visible in the dark. She should have been exhausted, hadn't slept properly in days, but her mind felt clear for the first time since she'd arrived. Awake. Focused. That's what you do when it breaks. Start again. Inside, she went straight to the kitchen table. The cookbook sat where she'd left it, open to the recipe for a perfect day with its scratched-out ingredient. Emma pulled the lamp closer and began turning pages slowly, methodically, looking for what she'd missed. She found the soufflé recipe first. Chocolate, with a note in the margin. Chocolate soufflé. He played for me while it baked. Said I needed to stay still or I'd ruin it. I'd never stayed so still in my life. When it rose, he kissed me. August 1965. Emma's breath caught. She read it again. The intimacy of it, the stillness, the rising soufflé, the kiss. A moment captured in the margins of a recipe like a pressed flower. She kept turning pages. Coco vin. Beef bourguignon. Tarte Tatin. All the French recipes clustered together in the summer of 1965, each with small annotations. Too much wine. Better the second time. He said it reminded him of Paris. Paris again. The place he'd told Rose about. The place she'd almost said yes to. Emma turned another page and something slipped out, a napkin, folded, yellowed with age. She picked it up carefully. Unfolded it. The print was faded but legible. Sullivan's Jazz Lounge. Every Saturday night. Below it, an address on a street Emma didn't recognize. And at the bottom, in her grandmother's handwriting, where it all began. July 1965. Emma stared at it. Her heart was beating fast. Jazz Lounge. Saturday nights. A musician who played in the square. Someone named Sullivan. She turned back to the soufflé note. He played for me. A musician. A jazz musician. Someone who'd played at Sullivan's and swept her grandmother into a summer romance that had ended with him leaving for Paris and Rose marrying kept searching. Else. She found the photo corners on the next page, 4 small black triangles pasted to the paper, framing an empty space. Someone had removed the photograph. Carefully, by the look of it, no torn edges, no damage. Just the ghost of where it had been. Below the empty frame, a note. Can't look at his face anymore. Removed this today. I thought it would help. It didn't. March 1968. 1 year into her marriage. 1 year of trying to move forward whilst carrying the weight of someone she couldn't forget. Emma touched the empty corners. I wondered what face had looked out from that space. Wondered if Rose had destroyed the photo or hidden it somewhere in this house, unable to fully let go. She checked the time. It's nearly midnight. Too late to text anyone. She did it anyway. I took a photo of the napkin with her phone. Send it to Lucas with a single line. Do you know this place? The reply came faster than she'd expected. He must have still been awake. Lucas, Sullivan's Jazz Lounge. Closed decades ago. But my grandfather will remember. A pause. Then another message. Lucas, come tomorrow. 2 p.m., we're visiting him. Emma stared at her phone. Read the messages twice. Felt something unfamiliar unfurl in her chest. Not hope. Not exactly. Something sharper. Clearer. Anticipation. She was going to find out who he was. The man her grandmother had loved. The musician who'd played in the square and made soufflé Rose and talked about Paris like it was a promise. The man Rose had chosen not to follow. Emma looked back at the cookbook, at the napkin, at the empty photo corners and the notes scattered through the pages like evidence of a life her grandmother had tried to bury
Tomorrow
and
she'll
couldn't.
take the next step, where it all began.
Tomorrow she'd meet Lucas's grandfather and ask about Sullivan's and the summer of 1965 and the man who'd left without saying goodbye. Tonight, she sat at the table and kept reading. Found another note near the end of the book, dated years later. Made chocolate soufflé tonight. First time in 40 years. It didn't rise. Maybe that's fitting. Some things aren't meant to come back. November 2005. Emma's throat tightened. She closed the cookbook and pressed her palms flat against the cover. Her grandmother had tried. Had lived her life, raised her daughter, kept her garden, made her cakes. Had been kind and steady and fine. But she'd also made chocolate soufflé 40 years later and watched it fail and understood the metaphor. Some things aren't meant to come back. Emma picked up her phone. I looked at Lucas's message again. Come tomorrow. 2 p.m. She typed a reply. Emma, I'll be there. Thank you. She almost left it there. Then added one more line. Emma, the tart was perfect. She sent it before she could overthink it. The response came a minute later. Lucas, it wasn't perfect. But it was honest. Emma stared at the screen. At those 5 words that somehow felt like more than they were. But it was honest. She set the phone down. I looked at the cookbook. At the napkin from Sullivan's Jazz Lounge and the empty space where a photograph had been. Tomorrow at 2. Lucas's grandfather. Answers maybe. Or at least the beginning of them. Emma felt exhausted and awake in equal measure. She should sleep. Knew she wouldn't. Instead, she made tea, found the tin of Earl Grey her grandmother had kept, the one that was probably stale, but smelled like every visit Emma had ever made to this kitchen, and sat with the cookbook open,
for the pieces of a
reading
woman
notes she
by
thought
Lamport.
she'd known. Finding a stranger instead. Someone braver and more broken than Emma had ever imagined. Someone who'd scratched out the one ingredient that mattered most and spent 60 years pretending it was enough. Emma turned to the recipe for a perfect day. Stared at the crossed out line. The one ingredient I couldn't find. What did you want, Rose? What did you cross out? Emma didn't know. Not yet. But tomorrow, she'd start looking. Lucas picked her up at 1:30. Emma was waiting on the doorstep, cookbook in hand, because standing inside felt like drowning in ghosts. He pulled up in a battered Land Rover that looked older than Emma. She climbed in without comment. They drove in silence for the first 5 minutes. Emma watched the countryside pass, hedgerows, stone walls, fields gone brown with autumn. Small, quiet, unchanging. The kind of landscape that made London feel like a fever dream. Your grandfather, Emma said finally. Does he know who I am? I told him Rose's granddaughter wanted to talk. He's excited. Fair warning, he'll ask you 100 questions and remember every answer. Emma nodded. Clutched the cookbook tighter. He's at Maplewood Gardens, Lucas continued. Moved there 2 years ago after he fell. Hated it at first, but now he runs the place. Organizes quiz nights. Beats everyone at chess. Sounds formidable. He is. Lucas glanced at her. You'll like him. Emma didn't respond. Wasn't sure she'd like anyone today. Wasn't sure she could focus on anything except the napkin from Sullivan's Jazz Lounge and the questions burning holes in her chest. I never visited her, she said suddenly. The words came out before she could stop them. Rose. When she was dying. The hospital called and I had a pitch meeting. A bloody pitch meeting. I told myself I'd come on the weekend. That she'd be fine until then. Lucas said nothing. Just drove.
Her voice
She wasn't
sounded
fine,
hollow.
Emma continued. She died that night. And I was in a conference room presenting a campaign for yogurt. Yogurt. That's what mattered more. Emma. Don't. She cut him off. Don't tell me it's okay. It's not. I chose work over her, and I can't undo that. I can't, her voice cracked. She stopped, furious at herself. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Then, my mum died when I was 16. Car accident. I was supposed to be with her that day. She was driving me to football practice. But I'd fought with her that morning about something stupid. Told her I'd get a ride with a maid instead. Emma looked at him. His jaw was tight, eyes fixed on the road. She went anyway. Hit black ice on the way home. I spent years thinking if I'd just been in the car, maybe I could've. I don't know. Warned her. Grabbed the wheel. Something. Lucas. I'm not saying it's the same, he said. I'm saying guilt doesn't care about logic. It just sits there. And you can't undo it. You can only decide what to do with it. Emma stared at him. At the tension in his shoulders. The carefully neutral expression that wasn't neutral at all. What did you do with it? She asked quietly. Opened a cafe. I tried to make things people would remember. He glanced at her. Not sure it's enough. But it's something. They drove the rest of the way in silence. But it felt different now. Less heavy. Less alone. Maplewood Gardens was a low brick building set back from the road, surrounded by gardens that lived up to the name. Lucas led Emma through the reception, nodded at the staff who clearly knew him, and down a corridor lined with watercolors of landscapes. Mr. Hart's room was at the end. Lucas knocked once, then opened the door. Grandad. We're here. The man sitting by the window looked up and smiled. He was small, wiry, with white hair that stood up in tufts and eyes that were sharp and bright and alive. Lucas, my boy. His voice was strong, no tremor.
Emma stepped
And
forward.
this must be Rose's
Emma.
granddaughter. Clark. Mr. Hart stood slowly, leaning on a cane, and held out his hand. Emma shook it. His grip was firm. Sit, sit. He gestured to the chairs. Lucas, make yourself useful. Tea. 3 cups. You know where everything is. Lucas rolled his eyes, but went to the small kitchenette in the corner. Mr. Hart settled back into his chair and fixed Emma with a look that felt like being read. You have Rose's eyes, he said. And her stubborn chin. She was a force, your grandmother. Emma's throat tightened. I didn't know her as well as I should have. Few people know anyone as well as they should. That's the tragedy of it. Mr. Hart nodded at the cookbook in Emma's lap. Lucas said you found something. May I? Emma handed it over. I watched him open it carefully, reverently. His fingers traced the cover, then turned pages slowly. Stopped on one of Rose's notes. Read it. His expression shifted recognition, nostalgia, something sadder. Rose Clark, he murmured. Now there was a woman. Did you know her well? Emma asked. Well enough. Lived 3 doors down from her family for 40 years. I watched her grow up. I watched her marry. Watch her. He trailed off. Turned another page. She was happy. Mostly. But there was always something underneath. Like she was listening to music no one else could hear. Emma leaned forward. Mr. Hart, I found this. She pulled out the napkin from Sullivan's Jazz Lounge. Do you remember this place? Mr. Hart's face lit up. Bobby Sullivan's place. Of course I remember. Summer of '65. Best jazz this town ever heard. Bobby was a saxophone player, came through on the summer circuit. I stayed 3 months. Changed everything. Changed everything how? The music, for one. On Saturdays, the whole town would show up. He'd play until midnight, and no one wanted to leave. Mr. Hart smiled. But it wasn't just the music. It was Bobby himself.
American,
Charismatic.
which
Made him exotic
talented.
back then. All the girls swooned. Emma's heart was pounding. Did Rose? Bobby only noticed one, Mr. Hart said gently. Rose. She'd sit in the front row every Saturday night. And he'd play just for her. You could tell. The way he looked at her whilst he played. The way she looked at him whilst she listened. He shook his head. They were inseparable that summer. You'd see them everywhere, walking by the river, sitting in the square, stealing kisses behind the bakery. Young and reckless and absolutely mad for each other. Emma couldn't breathe. What happened? August came. Bobby had to leave. Some big opportunity in Paris, a record deal, I think. Or a residency. Something that could have made his career. Mr. Hart's expression grew somber. He asked Rose to come with him. The room went silent except for the sound of Lucas setting down teacups. Did she? Emma's voice shook. Did she want to go? Mr. Hart looked at her. His eyes were kind. I think part of her did. A big part. But she was already engaged to your grandfather by then. Emma's world tilted. What? John Clark. Good man. Steady. He'd proposed that spring, before Bobby ever came to town. Rose had said yes. It was sensible. Safe. John worked at the post office and had prospects. Rose's family approved. But she loved Bobby, Emma said. It came out fierce. Angry. She did, Mr. Hart agreed. But love isn't always enough, is it? She had commitments. Expectations. A life already planned out. He turned a page in the cookbook. And Bobby was leaving. No guarantees. No promises except his music and Paris and a dream that might not come true. So she stayed, Emma whispered. She stayed. Bobby left. And Rose married John 6 months later. Mr. Hart closed the cookbook carefully. She was a good wife. A good mother. But I always thought. He trailed off. What? Emma asked. That she never stopped listening to that music. Emma felt the music Bobby close over hers. She looked down, surprised. His fingers were warm, solid, grounding her. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. Did Bobby ever come back? Emma asked. Mr. Hart shook his head. Not that I know of. I heard he made it in Paris for a while. Then the trail went cold. Could be anywhere now. Could be dead. Emma stared at the cookbook. At the napkin. At 60 years of what-ifs compressed into recipes and margin notes and a photograph Rose had removed because she couldn't bear to look at his face anymore. She chose safety over him, Emma said. Her voice sounded far away. And spent the rest of her life regretting it. Or, Lucas said quietly, she chose the life she could build over the dream she couldn't guarantee. That's not the same as a mistake. Emma looked at him. At his hand still holding hers. The expression on his face, complicated, careful, invested. Isn't it? She asked. Lucas didn't answer. Mr. Hart cleared his throat. Rose loved your grandfather, Emma. Maybe not the way she loved Bobby. But she loved him. And she built a good life. It wasn't the life she dreamed of. But it was real. And it mattered. Emma nodded. Couldn't speak. They stayed for another hour. Drank tea. Listened to Mr. Hart's stories about the town in the 60s, about Rose as a young woman, about Bobby Sullivan's saxophone echoing through the square on Saturday nights. When they left, Emma's head was full of music she'd never heard and a love story that had ended before it began. In the car, Lucas didn't let go of her hand right away. When he finally did, Emma felt the absence of cold. Are you okay? He asked. Emma looked out the window. At the countryside passing. At the life her grandmother had chosen, small, safe enough. She didn't know if that was true. But it felt like something Rose would have said. And maybe that was enough to start with. Emma showed up at Heart and Soul at 7 without being asked. Lucas was wiping down tables, the cafe dark except for the kitchen lights at the back. He looked up when she came in. Didn't seem surprised. Soufflé? He asked. Emma held up the cookbook. Soufflé. He nodded. Locked the door behind her. The recipe was in Rose's handwriting, copied from somewhere else. The instructions were precise, almost clinical. But in the margin, that note, he played for me while it baked. Said I needed to stay still or I'd ruin it. Emma read it 3 times while Lucas gathered ingredients, chocolate, eggs, cream, sugar. You're quiet, he said. I'm thinking. About? Emma set the cookbook down. About whether my grandmother's entire life was a mistake. Lucas stopped measuring sugar. I looked at her. That's a hell of a conclusion to jump to. Is it? Emma's voice was sharper than she intended. She loved someone. He asked her to come with him. She said no. Then spent 60 years making soufflés and writing notes about what could have been. That sounds like regret to me. Or, Lucas said carefully, it sounds like someone who made a choice and lived with it. That's not the same as a mistake. How is it different? Because she had a life. She had your mother. She had you. She had this house, her garden, her recipes. That's not nothing. Emma shook her head. But what if it wasn't enough? What if she spent every day wondering what Paris would have been like? What if she died still thinking about Bobby Sullivan and the life she didn't have the courage to choose? Set down the measuring cup. Separate the eggs. 4 of them. Yolks in one bowl, whites in another. Emma blinked at the subject change. But she did it. Cracked eggs with shaking hands, separated them badly, some yolk bleeding into the whites. Doesn't matter, Lucas said when she swore under her breath. Just get them apart. She managed. Barely. Lucas took the yolks, whisked them with sugar until they went pale and thick. Add melted chocolate. The mixture turned glossy dark. Whisk the whites, he told her. Until they're stiff. Don't stop. Emma whisked. Her arm burned. The whites stayed liquid. Keep going. It's not working. It will. Keep going. Emma whisked harder. Faster. Her shoulder ached. The whites began to foam, then thicken, then transform, stiff peaks that held their shape when she lifted the whisk. There, Lucas said. Now fold them into the chocolate. Gently. You're combining two things that don't want to mix. Emma spooned the whites into the chocolate mixture. Started folding, too rough at first, then more carefully as Lucas guided her. Under and over. Light. You're not beating it into submission. You're coaxing it. The mixture came together. Aerated. Light. Emma poured it into the ramekins Lucas had buttered and sugared. Now we bake it, Lucas said. And we don't open the oven. We don't slam doors. We wait. He slid the ramekins into the oven. Set the timer. 12 minutes. Emma washed her hands. Stared at the oven. What if she regretted everything, she asked quietly. Her whole marriage. Her whole life. What if it was all just settling? Lucas leaned against the counter. What if she chose a different kind of love? One that was steady. Real. One that didn't burn out after the summer ended. But what if steady wasn't enough? Enough for what? Lucas's voice had an edge now. To feel alive? To feel like her life mattered? Emma, she raised a daughter. She kept a garden.
She mattered to this
She was
town.
kind to everyone.
She
mattered
met.
to me. That's not settling. That's building a life. A life she didn't want. A life she chose. Lucas pushed off the counter. She could have gone to Paris. She didn't. That was her decision. Maybe it was the wrong one. Maybe it wasn't. But it was hers. How do you know she didn't spend every day wishing she'd chosen differently? Lucas stopped stirring the cream he'd been working on. I looked at her. Emma, is this about Rose? Or is this about you? The question hit like a slap. Emma opened her mouth. I closed it. Felt something crack in her chest. I don't know anymore, she whispered. The silence stretched. Heavy. Lucas didn't look away. What are you running from? He asked quietly. Emma's hands were shaking. I had a job. A relationship. A flat in London. I was supposed to be someone. And then, her voice broke. I wasn't good at any of it. The job was killing me. David was with me because I was convenient. The flat was just expensive and empty. And I kept telling myself it was fine. That I'd chosen it. That this was what success looked like. Emma. But it wasn't fine. And when it all fell apart, I realized I'd spent 5 years building a life I hated. And now I'm here, reading about my grandmother doing the exact same thing, and I can't. She stopped. Swallowed hard. I can't tell if I'm grieving for her or if I'm terrified of becoming her. Lucas said nothing. Just watched her with an expression she couldn't read. The timer went off. He opened the oven. The soufflés had risen, perfect, golden, crowned and trembling.
Emma stared at them.
Look at that, at
He
the
said
small
quietly.
miracle of air and heat and chemistry. At something fragile that had held together despite the odds. Lucas plated them. Handed one to Emma. Sat down across from her. Eat it while it's hot, he said. Soufflés don't wait. Emma took a spoonful. The texture was impossible, light, rich, melting. The taste was dark chocolate and cream and something underneath that felt like warmth, like comfort, like yes. She closed her eyes. Opened them to find Lucas watching her. Rose made this 40 years after Bobby left, he said. And it didn't rise. She wrote that in the cookbook. Remember? Emma nodded. This one rose, Lucas said. Maybe that means something. Maybe it doesn't. But it's not the same soufflé Rose made. It's yours. Emma stared at him. At the soufflé. At the cookbook lying open between them. For what it's worth, Lucas said, I think Rose lived exactly the life she meant to. Not the one she dreamed of. But the one she built. The one that mattered. And I think she made peace with that. How do you know? Because she kept the cookbook. She kept the notes. She didn't burn them or throw them away. She kept them, and she lived her life. Both things were true. Emma's throat was tight. I want to believe that. Then believe it. I don't know how. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Then, by making your own soufflé. By choosing something, anything that's yours. Not what you think you should want. What you actually want. What if I don't know what that is? Then you start looking. He gestured at the cookbook. That's what you're doing, isn't it? Looking for answers. Looking for Rose.
Down at her plate.
Looking for
The
yourself. The soufflé was already sinking, collapsing in on itself the way they always did. Temporary. Beautiful. Gone. It doesn't last, she said. Nothing does, Lucas replied. That's not the point. What is the point? That you made it. That it existed. That it was perfect for 12 minutes and then it changed, and that's okay. Emma set down her spoon. Stared at the ruins of the soufflé on her plate. Lucas reached across the table. Took her hand. His fingers were warm, steady, real. You're not Rose, he said quietly. You're Emma. And you get to choose differently. You get to choose yourself. Emma looked at their hands. On the way his thumb was tracing absent circles on her wrist. At the connection that felt too big for what it was. What if I choose wrong, she whispered. Then you choose again. She looked up at him. At the expression on his face, open, honest, something vulnerable underneath the steadiness. Is that what you did? She asked. After your mum died. After everything. Did you choose again? Lucas's jaw tightened. I tried. Still trying. Does it get easier? No. He squeezed her hand. But it gets clearer. They sat like that for a long time. Hands joined across the table. Soufflés collapsing. The kitchen is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of their breathing. Emma didn't pull away. Neither did Lucas. And for the first time since she'd arrived in this town, Emma felt like she wasn't drowning. Just treading water. But that was enough. For now. Saturday morning, Emma woke to rain against the windows. By noon it had cleared, leaving the garden window with tea going cold in her hands, staring at the wreckage outside. 6 months of neglect had turned Rose's careful beds into wilderness, roses strangling themselves, herbs gone to seed, everything desperately overgrown. Emma set down her tea and went to find the shed. The tools were where they'd always been. Secateurs hanging on nails. A spade with a worn wooden handle. Gloves that had molded to her grandmother's hands. Emma pulled them on. They were too small, pinching at the knuckles. She started with the roses. Cutting back deadwood. Her hands remembered the motion from summers here as a child, Rose showing her where to cut, how to angle the blade. Just above the butt, Emma. Give it room to grow. She was elbow-deep in thorns when she heard the gate. Lucas. Carrying a pair of new gardening gloves and a flask. Thought you could use help, he said. Emma straightened. Pushed hair out of her face with her forearm. You don't have to. I know. He held up the gloves. I want to. Something in her chest loosened. Okay. Lucas set down the flask, coffee, still hot, and pulled on the gloves. Where do you want me? Weeds, Emma said. The beds are completely overrun. They worked side by side. Lucas pulled weeds with methodical efficiency. Emma cutting back roses, trimming lavender gone woody, clearing away the accumulated chaos of abandonment. It was meditative. Peaceful. The sun broke through the clouds. Birds appeared, robins, a blackbird, something small and brown Emma didn't recognize. The garden smelled of earth and rain and green things growing. She loved this, Emma said after a while. The garden,
Lucas said.
She'd bring me herbs. Rosemary for the cafe. Thyme. Sometimes just flowers because she thought the counter looked sad. Emma's throat tightened. I should have helped her. Should have visited more. Should have. Emma. Lucas didn't look up from the weeds he was pulling. You're here now. That matters. She nodded. Went back to the roses. An hour passed. Maybe more. The garden began to reveal itself, structure beneath the chaos, beauty under the neglect. Emma could see where Rose had planted things. Could see the care in the layout, the thought. She moved to the far corner. An old rose bush, half dead, choking in ivy. Emma started cutting back the ivy, pulling at the roots. Her spade hit something metal. She stopped. I looked down. saw the edge of something rusted half buried in the dirt. Lucas. He came over. Knelt beside her. What is it? I don't know. They dug together. Carefully. Emma's hands were shaking. A tin box. Old, rusted at the corners, the kind biscuits came in decades ago. It was buried maybe a foot down, beneath the rose bush, beneath the ivy, beneath years of accumulated soil. Emma pulled it out. Set it on the grass. I stared at it. Open it, Lucas said quietly. Emma's fingers fumbled with the lid. It was stuck, rusted shut. Lucas took out his penknife, worked it under the edge, pried gently. The lid gave out. Inside, letters. A stack of them, tied with faded blue ribbon. A black and white photograph. A postcard, yellowed with age. Emma lifted out the photograph with trembling hands. Rose. Young, maybe 20. In a summer dress, laughing mid-spin. And beside her, holding her hand, a man. Tall, dark-haired, impossibly handsome, looking at Rose like she was the only person in the world. You could tell even from the still image, the way their bodies leaned together, the way Rose's skirt was caught mid-swirl, the way he was smiling. Emma couldn't breathe. That's him, Lucas said. That's Bobby. Emma nodded. Couldn't speak. She set the photograph down carefully. Picked up the postcard. The image on the front, the Eiffel Tower at sunset, Paris, written in elegant script across the top. The back was blank except for Rose's address written in unfamiliar handwriting. No message. No stamp. Never sent. Emma's hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. The letters, Lucas said softly. Emma untied the ribbon. Her fingers felt numb. Pulled out the first letter. The paper was thin onion skin, covered in slanted handwriting. She read aloud, her voice breaking. My darling Rose. Paris is beautiful, but nothing compares to you. I play every night at a club in Montmartre, the kind of place I used to dream about. The music is good. The people are kind. I'm making a name for myself. But all I can think about is you. Your face in the audience on Saturday nights. The way you closed your eyes when I played the slow songs. The strawberry tart you made. The way you laughed when I burned the soufflé. I know you made your choice. I know I have no right to write this. But I need you to know, if you changed your mind, I'd wait. I'd wait forever if that's what it took. I love you. I'll love you until the day I die. And if you never come, I'll understand. But know that every note I play is for you. Yours always, Bobby.
Emma stopped.
October 1965.
The letter blurred.
She was crying and hadn't realized it. Lucas's arm came around her shoulders. Solid. Steady. He loved her, Emma whispered. He really loved her. She loved him too. Then why didn't she go? Lucas was quiet. Then, maybe she was scared. Maybe she thought it wouldn't last. Maybe she couldn't leave her family. Maybe he stopped. Maybe there's no good reason. Maybe she just couldn't. Emma looked at the letter. At Bobby's handwriting. In other words, I'd wait forever. There are more, Lucas said gently. Emma pulled out the second letter. October 1965. The 3rd. November. The 4th. December. 6 letters total. Each one shorter than the last. Each one is more desperate. The final letter was dated February 1966. Rose. I haven't heard from you. I don't know if you're getting these letters. I don't know if you're reading them. I'm still here. Still waiting. But I can't do this forever. If you want me, if you want this, come. I'll be at Gare du Nord every Sunday at noon for the rest of the month. I'll wait for you. But if you don't come, I'll understand. I'll let you go. I'll stop writing. I'll stop hoping. Please come. Bobby. Emma set down the letter. I looked at the photograph. At Rose laughing. At Bobby looking at her like she was everything. She didn't go, Emma said. He waited and she didn't go. Lucas picked up the postcard. I turned it over. He sent this. Or tried to. But it never went. No stamp. No message. Just her address. Maybe he couldn't finish it, Emma said. Maybe he wrote it and couldn't find the words. Or maybe he wrote it and realized there was nothing left to say. Emma looked at the stack of letters. At Rose's name written 6 times in Bobby's slanting hand. At the postcard that had traveled from Paris to this garden, only to be buried beneath a rose bush for 60 years. She kept them, Emma whispered. She married my grandfather. She built a life,
them where no
but
one
she
would find
kept
them.
Bobby's letters, where she could visit them if she wanted. Or where she could try to forget them, Lucas said. Emma picked up the photograph again, stared at Rose's laughing face, at Bobby's smile, at the moment captured forever young, in love, before the choice that would define everything that came after. What do you think she'd want me to do with these? Emma asked. Lucas was quiet for a long time. Then, I think she'd want you to understand. Understand what? That she made the best choice she could with what she knew. That she lived her life. That she didn't regret you. Emma looked at him. At the kindness in his expression. The steadiness. How do you know she didn't regret me? Didn't I regret everything? Because she buried these under a rose bush, Lucas said. Not in the rubbish. Not burned. Not destroyed. She kept them safe. But she didn't let them define her. That's not a regret. He paused. That's making peace. Emma wanted to believe him. Wanted to think Rose had lived without regret. Had chosen her life consciously, fully, without spending 60 years mourning what she'd lost. But the letters sat heavy in her hands. And Bobby's words echoed in her head. I'd wait forever. Please come. And Rose hadn't gone. Emma gathered the letters carefully, retired the ribbon, put them back in the tin with the photograph and the postcard. I need to know what happened to him, she said. To Bobby. I need to know if he's still out there. She stopped. If he ever stopped waiting.
How?
Lucas nodded.
We'll start looking.
Then we'll find
Internet.
Archives. Whatever it takes. Emma looked at him. At the determination in his expression. By the way he kept saying we like it was automatic. Why are you helping me? She asked. Lucas met her eyes. Because you're not running anymore. And that matters. Something shifted in Emma's chest. Settled. Clicked into place. Thank you, she whispered. Lucas squeezed her shoulder. Come on. Let's go inside. Make tea. Figure out where to start. They left the garden half-tamed now, still wild, but breathing, and carried the tin box into the kitchen. Emma set it on the table beside the cookbook. 2 relics. 2 pieces of Rose's hidden life uncovered. Outside, the roses swayed in the wind. And beneath them, the space where the box had been buried for 60 years sat empty, waiting to be filled with something new. They made tea. Carried the tin box to the porch. Sat on the steps with mugs going cold in their hands whilst Emma read aloud. The first letter, October 1965. Bobby in Paris, playing clubs, building a life, desperate for Rose to join him. I know you made your choice. But if you changed your mind, I'd wait. The second, November. More desperate. Less certain. I play your favorite songs every night. The audience loves them, but they're not for the audience. They're for you. They've always been for you. The third, December. Shorter. The hope is starting to fracture. I don't know if you're reading these. I don't know if you want to. But I can't stop writing them. Can't stop hoping. Emma's voice shook on every word. Lucas sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, saying nothing. The fourth letter, January 1966. It's winter here. Cold. I walk past couples in the street and think of us by the river. I see strawberries at the market and remember your tart. Everything here reminds me of something I don't have anymore. The 5th, February. The one where Bobby proposed Sunday meetings at Gare du Nord. I'll wait for you. But if you don't come, I'll understand. I'll let you go. Emma stopped. Stared at the page. There's one more. Lucas nodded. She pulled out the final letter. The paper was different, heavier, the handwriting more controlled. Less desperate. More resigned. The date, March 1967. The same month Rose had married John Clark. Emma's hands trembled as she read. Dear Rose, I understand now. You chose your path, and I must choose mine. I waited at Gare du Nord every Sunday for a month. You didn't come. I told myself there were 100 reasons: family, fear, the impossibility of leaving everything behind for a man with nothing but a saxophone and dreams. I'm not angry. I wish I could be. Anger would be easier than this. Someone told me you're getting married. I hope it's true. I hope he's kind. I hope he makes you laugh the way I did. I hope he makes you strawberry tarts and plays music for you while soufflés rise. I hope your life is filled with all the love you deserve. I'll always wonder what we could have been. But I'm done wondering what you could have chosen. You already chose. And I have to respect that, even if it breaks me. I'll carry our summer with me always. It was the best 3 months of my life. And if that's all I get, it'll have to be enough. Goodbye, Rose. Yours no longer. Robert Sullivan. Emma's voice broke on the last line. The letter fell from her hands. She pressed her palms to her face and sobbed. Lucas's arm came around her immediately, pulled her close. She turned into his chest and broke completely. 6 months of grief and guilt and confusion pouring out in ragged, gasping breaths. He didn't speak, just held her. Let her shake apart against him whilst the afternoon light slanted across the porch and the garden. Emma choked out finally. Everything. He loved her and she let him go. Let him wait at a train station every Sunday like a fool. Let him write letters she never answered. How could she? She stopped. Couldn't finish. She didn't give up everything, Lucas said quietly. His hand moved in slow circles on her back. She gave up one thing. But Emma, she built a whole life. She had your mother. She had decades with your grandfather. She had this garden, this town, you. That's not nothing. But was she happy? Emma pulled back enough to look at him. Her face was wet, her eyes burning. How do I know if she was happy? How do I know she didn't spend every day regretting it? Lucas reached up, brushed tears from her cheek with his thumb. The gesture was so gentle it made her chest ache. The cookbook, he said. Every recipe has joy in it. Even the sad ones. Even the notes about Bobby. That's not a regret. That's someone who lived fully. Who loved deeply. Who made choices and carried them. She buried his letters under a rose bush. And she kept making strawberry tarts. Both things are true. Emma stared at him. At the steadiness in his expression. The conviction. I've spent my whole life terrified of making the wrong choice, she whispered. Of wasting time on the wrong person, the wrong job, the wrong everything. And now I'm looking at my grandmother's life, and I can't tell if she made the right choice, or if she just, her voice broke. If she just convinced herself it was right because it was too late to go back. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. His hand was still on her face, thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. Maybe there is no wrong choice, he said finally. Just different stories. Rose could have gone to Paris. Could have followed Bobby. Could have had a completely different life. Maybe it would have been better. Maybe it would have been worse. Maybe it would have fallen apart everything she ever wanted. Maybe. Lucas's eyes held hers. But she didn't choose that story. She chose this one. And this one had your mother in it. And you. And 60 years of strawberry tarts and gardens and being kind to everyone she met. That's not a wasted life. That's just life. Emma's throat was so tight she could barely breathe. How do you know that's enough? Because she kept living it. She didn't give up. She didn't spend 60 years in bed mourning what she'd lost. She made a choice and then she lived it. That takes courage. That takes strength. Or resignation. Or both. Lucas's voice was soft. Maybe they're not as different as you think. Emma looked at him. By the way, the afternoon light caught in his hair. At the expression on his face, open, honest, something raw underneath the calm. She was suddenly, acutely aware of how close he was. Of his hand still on her face. Of the space between them that had somehow shrunk to nothing. Lucas's eyes dropped to her mouth. She saw his jaw tighten. Saw the moment he leaned in barely, just a fraction. Emma's breath caught. Then he stopped. Pulled back. Dropped his hand. We should, his voice was rough. He cleared his throat. We should make the apple crumble tomorrow. Emma felt the loss of his touch like cold. What? The apple crumbled. From the cookbook. Rose's note said it was the last thing she cooked before Bobby left. We should make it. Emma stared at him. At the careful distance he'd put between them. On the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. Disappointment crashed through her. And relief. And something else she couldn't name. Okay, she managed. Tomorrow. Lucas nodded. Stood. I should go. It's getting late. It wasn't late. The sun was still up. But Emma didn't argue. Thank you, she said. For today. For listening. She gestured vaguely at the letters, the garden, the wreckage of the afternoon. You don't have to thank me. I meant what I said. You're not running. That matters. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. He smiled, small, sad, honest. But we'll figure it out. Then he left. I walked down the path and out the gate without looking back. Emma sat on the porch steps with Robert Sullivan's letters in her lap and her grandmother's life spread out before her like a map to somewhere she didn't understand. I'll carry our summer with me always. Goodbye, Rose. She picked up the photograph. Stared at Rose laughing, at Bobby looking at her with everything he had. 60 years ago, Rose had sat somewhere, maybe this very porch, and made a choice that had echoed through the rest of her life. And Emma still didn't know if it was the right one. But Lucas's voice echoed in her head, maybe there is no wrong choice. Just different stories. Emma looked at the cookbook sitting beside her. The recipes are filled with joy and regret and everything in between. Tomorrow they'd make apples crumble. The last thing Rose had cooked before Bobby left. And maybe, Emma would start to understand what it meant to choose something and live with it. Even if it hurts. Even if you never stopped wondering. Even if the person you loved walked away and never came back. She gathered the letters carefully. Put them back in the tin. Carried it inside and set it beside the cookbook on the kitchen table. 2 pieces of Rose's heart. Kept separate for 60 years. Finally brought together. Emma made more tea. Sat at the table. Opened the cookbook to the apple crumble recipe. In the margin, Rose's the last thing I cooked before he left. I couldn't eat it. Gave it to the neighbor's children. They said it was the best thing they'd ever tasted. I'll never make it again. September 1965. Below it, in shakier script, added decades later. I made it today. First time in 58 years. It still tastes like goodbye. But I survived the first goodbye. I'll survive this one too. March 2023. Emma's breath caught. March 2023. 1 year before Rose died. 1 year before the stroke that had taken her whilst Emma was too busy to visit. Rose had made the apple crumble one last time. And she'd written that she'd survived. Not that she was happy. Not that she had no regrets. Just that she'd survived. And maybe that was enough. Emma closed the cookbook. Rested her hand on the cover. Felt the weight of everything it held. Tomorrow, she'd make an apple crumble. Tomorrow, she'll say goodbye. And maybe, finally, she'd understand what her grandmother had been trying to tell her all along. Lucas arrived at 10 with butter and brown sugar because Emma had texted to say she was out. She opened the door in bare feet, hair pulled back, wearing an old jumper that had probably been Rose's. The cottage smelled of coffee and the faint sweetness of the garden coming through open windows. You've been staying here, Lucas said. Not a question. The bed and breakfast felt pointless. This is, Emma gestured vaguely. It's mine now. Might as well use it. Lucas stepped inside. The cottage did feel different. Lived in. Emma's laptop sat on the kitchen table beside the cookbook. Her jacket hung on the hook by the door. There were fresh flowers in a vase, nothing fancy.
It suits you, he
just
said.
Stems cut
Emma
from the
looked
garden.
surprised.
Does it? Yeah. He set the butter on the counter. It does. They gathered ingredients in comfortable silence. Apples from the market. Flour and oats. Cinnamon. The recipe was simple, but Rose's note made it heavy. The last thing I cooked before he left. Emma washed the apples. Lucas found a peeler. They stood side by side at the counter and began working. I almost left Maplewood once, Lucas said after a while. Emma glanced at him. Yeah, job offer in New York. Prestigious restaurant. Head pastry chef. It was everything I'd trained for. What stopped you? Lucas focused on the apple in his hands, peeling curling away in one long ribbon. My dad got sick. Heart problems. I came home to help. Took over the cafe temporarily. He set down the peeled apple, picked up another. By the time he recovered, I realized I didn't want to leave anymore. I'd built something here. The cafe. The town. This life. He paused. It wasn't the life I'd planned. But it was good. Emma peeled her apple slowly, thinking. Do you regret it? Staying. Lucas looked at her. Really looked. Not even a little bit. Some things are worth staying for. The air between them went still. Charged. Emma's hands stopped moving. Her pulse kicked up. Lucas held her gaze. Didn't look away. Emma did, turning back to the apples with shaking hands. The crumble smells like Rose's house used to. Like Sunday mornings. Emma. I'd come here as a child and she'd have something to bake. Always. The whole house would smell like sugar and butter, and she stopped. Set down the peeler. I'm starting to understand her. She wasn't perfect. She had this whole secret life before I existed, and she chose to stay. To build something
Lucas
real
moved
even if it
closer.
wasn't a passionate
Not
thing.
touching,
But close enough that she could feel the heat of him. Emma, he said quietly. Passion isn't the opposite of real. They can be the same thing. Emma looked up at him. At the steadiness in his expression. At the certainty. Can they? Her voice came out barely a whisper. Lucas's hand came up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Yeah, I think they can. This time, when he leaned in, he didn't stop. His mouth found hers, gentle, questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Emma kissed him back. Her hands came up to his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. He tasted like coffee and something sweeter. His hand slid into her hair, the other settling at her waist, and Emma felt something in her chest crack open. Not breaking. Blooming. The kiss deepened. Lucas pulled her closer. Emma went willingly, desperately, like she'd been waiting for this without knowing it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. Okay, he said. Okay. Emma laughed. It came out shaky. Okay, that's all I've got right now. She kissed him again. Briefer. Softer. Then pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I don't know how long I'm staying, she said. The words felt like confession. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. Emma. Lucas's thumb traced her jaw. I'm not asking you to know. I'm not asking you for plans or promises. I'm just asking for now. Now. Right now. Today. Tomorrow if you want. But I'm not asking for your whole future. Just, he searched
Emma
for words.
stared at him.
Just
whatever
at the
you can
honesty
get.
in his face. The lack of pressure. The offer of something without strings attached. Now I can do it, she whispered. Lucas smiled. Kissed her forehead. Then that's enough. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped together in Rose's kitchen, apples half peeled on the counter, the recipe for goodbye waiting to be finished. Then Emma stepped back, took a breath, and picked up the peeler. We should finish this before it gets dark. Practical, Lucas said. But he was smiling. They worked together. Peeled apples. Sliced them thin. Tossed them with sugar and cinnamon until they glistened. Made the crumble topping butter worked into flour and oats and brown sugar until it looked like sweet sand. Their hands brushed. Constantly. Every time, Emma felt the spark of it. Lucas caught her hand once. Brought it to his lips. Kissed her flour-dusted knuckles. Emma felt her face go hot. You're distracting me, she said. Good. She laughed. Actually, I laughed. It felt foreign and perfect. They assembled the crumble. Apple mixture in the dish. Topping scattered over the top. Into the oven. 40 minutes. Lucas set the timer. Emma washed her hands. When she turned, he was watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. What? She asked. Nothing. You just, he shook his head. You look different. Lighter. I don't feel lighter. No? Emma thought about it. About the weight she'd carried since arriving, the guilt, the grief, the crushing sense of failure. It was still there. But something had shifted. Maybe a little, she admitted. Lucas moved closer. Slid his arms around her waist. Emma leaned into him, her head finding the hollow of his shoulder. Like what? Anything. Something true. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, I've been so afraid of heartbreak that I stopped letting anyone in. I chose jobs I hated because they looked impressive. I stayed with David because leaving felt like admitting failure. I built this entire life around what I thought I was supposed to want. She paused. And then it all fell apart anyway. And I realized I'd wasted 5 years being terrified of the wrong thing. Lucas's arms tightened around her. What should you have been terrified of? Wasting my life on things that didn't matter. He was quiet. Then, are you still terrified? Yes, Emma said honestly. But maybe it's the right thing now. Lucas pulled back enough to look at her. The right things being? That I'll leave here and realize I made the same mistake Rose did. That I'll choose safety over something real and spend the rest of my life writing notes in the margins of recipes. Emma. Lucas's voice was serious. Rose didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. And she lived it. You can honor that without repeating it. How? By making your own choice. Whatever it is. London, here, somewhere else entirely. But make it yours. Not what Rose did or didn't do. Not what you think you should want. What you actually want. Emma stared at him. What if I don't know? Then take your time figuring it out. What if I hurt you whilst I'm figuring it out? Lucas smiled. Sad. Honest. Then I'll survive. That's what people do, right? They survive. Emma thought of Bobby's letters. I'll carry our summer with me always. She thought of Rose's notes. I survived the first goodbye. I'll survive this one too. I don't want to be another person you survive, she whispered. Too late. Lucas kissed her forehead. You already matter. The only question is what we do about it. The timer pulled the crumble from the oven. It was perfect, golden, bubbling, the smell filling the kitchen with sweetness and memory. The last thing I cooked before he left. Emma stared at it. Thought of Rose standing in this kitchen 60 years ago, making this exact dish for a man she loved and was about to lose. Do you think she was brave? Emma asked. Or just scared? Lucas set the dish on the counter. I turned to her. I think she was both. And I think that's okay. They let the crumble cool. Sat at the table with tea and the cookbook open between them. Emma turned pages slowly. Read notes she'd read a dozen times. But they felt different now. Less like accusations. More like understanding. Rose had loved Bobby. Had let him go. Had married John and built a life and kept a garden and raised a daughter. Had buried letters under a rose bush and kept making strawberry tarts. Had carried it all, the love, the loss, the choice, the consequences. And she'd survived. Not perfectly. Not without regret. But she'd survived. I want to find him, Emma said suddenly. Bobby. I want to know what happened to him. If he's still alive. If she stopped. If he ever stopped carrying that summer. Lucas nodded. Then we'll find him. How? Research. Archives. Internet deep dives. Whatever it takes. You don't have to. I know, Lucas said. I want to. Emma looked at him. At this man who'd shown up at her door with a casserole and truth. Who'd taught her to make pastry and soufflé and let her fall apart without trying to fix her. Who'd kissed her in this kitchen like it mattered. Thank you, she said. For what? For now. Lucas smiled. Took her hand across the table. Apple crumble straight from the dish with 2 spoons. It was perfect, tart and sweet, the crumble topping buttery and crisp. It tasted like goodbye. But also like something else. Like the possibility of hello. Emma couldn't sleep. 3 in the morning. She'd been lying in Rose's bed for hours, staring at shadows on the ceiling, her mouth still tasting of Lucas. Finally, she gave up. Went downstairs in bare feet and Rose's old dressing gown. Made tea she wouldn't drink. Opened her laptop at the kitchen table because her mind wouldn't stop. Robert Sullivan. She typed it into the search bar. Added jazz musicians. Added Paris. The results were a mess. Dozens of Robert Sullivans. Musicians, accountants, teachers. None of them are right. She refined the search. Added saxophone. Added 1960s. More nothing. Dead ends. Websites in French she couldn't read. Jazz forums from 2003 that led nowhere. Emma kept digging. Found a database of American jazz musicians abroad. Scrolled through hundreds of names. Sullivan, R. Sullivan, Robert. Sullivan, Bobby. There. Sullivan, Robert J., born in 1940, Chicago, saxophone, active in Paris 1965 to 2018. Emma's heart stopped. She clicked. The entry was sparse. A few album titles. A mention of the Paris Jazz Collective. One grainy photograph from the 70s, Robert with his saxophone, older but still handsome, still alive with that same light the photo in Rose's tin box had captured. At the bottom, D. March 2018, Paris. Dead. 6 years dead. Emma stared at the screen. Felt something twist in her chest, not grief exactly. She'd never known him. But the finality of it. The door closed on whatever answers he might have given. She kept searching. Found an obituary in Le Monde. Fed it through a translator that mangled half the words, but got the point across. Survived by wife Marie Claire, 3 children, 7 grandchildren. He'd had a whole life. A full life. I looked at the photograph again. Robert at 50-something, gray just starting at his temples, holding his saxophone like it was part of his body. He looked happy. That was the part that hurt. Not that he'd died. That he'd been happy. That Rose staying hadn't ruined him. That he'd moved on and built something beautiful and probably barely thought about the girl who'd said no. Emma's throat was tight. She didn't know what she'd wanted to find. Evidence that Rose had mattered? That their summer had been worth something? That love like that didn't just evaporate? She kept clicking. Found reviews of his albums in French music magazines. Found a few concert listings from the 90s. Found a reference to an oral history project jazz musicians interviewed about their careers. Found a link to the archive. I clicked it. Waited for the page to load. Paris Jazz Oral History Project. Robert Sullivan interview, 1995. Emma held her breath. Clicked play on the audio file. Static. Then a voice, older, American accent faded, but still there. Robert. The interviewer asked about influences. About Paris in the 60s. About the evolution of jazz. Robert answered thoughtfully, his voice warm, intelligent. Emma fast-forwarded. 15 minutes in. 20. 25. Then, interviewer, looking back on such a long career, any regrets? Emma froze. Hit pause. Couldn't make herself press play. She sat there for a full minute, staring at the paused audio file. Then forced herself to click. Robert's voice, contemplative. Just one. A girl I left behind in a small American town. Rose was her name. Emma's breath caught. I asked her to come with me to Paris. She said no. It broke my heart. For years, God, for years, I thought she'd made the wrong choice. That we could have been extraordinary together. Better than I knew myself. She knew what she needed. Roots. Stability. A life she could build with her own hands, not one built around someone else's dream. And I was offering her a dream. Dreams are beautiful, but you can't live in them. Another pause. Longer. Some loves teach you who you are. Rose taught me that. She taught me that love isn't always about being together. Sometimes it's about respecting someone enough to let them go. I spent 10 years angry about it. Then I met Marie Claire and realized Rose was right. She knew. And I'll always be grateful I knew her, even if I couldn't keep her. Emma stopped the recording. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely control the trackpad. She knew herself better than I knew myself. No regret. Not resentment. Gratitude. Bobby had lived 53 more years. I had found love again. Had built a career, a family, a life. And when he looked back at Rose, he didn't see a mistake. He saw the woman who'd taught him what love actually meant. Emma read the obituary again. Stared at the photograph. Listened to the interview twice more, her chest cracking open with something she couldn't name. Then she picked up her phone and called Lucas. He answered on the 4th ring, voice rough. Emma? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Her voice came out strangled. I found him. Bobby. Robert Sullivan. Silence. Then Lucas, more awake, and he died 6 years ago. I had a wife. 3 kids. My whole career in Paris. She stopped. Started again. He didn't regret her. Rose. He understood why she stayed. Said she knew herself better than he knew himself. Said she taught him what love meant. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. The words burst out. I thought he'd spent his whole life pining and broken, and she'd thrown away something irreplaceable. But he was grateful. He moved on. He was happy. That's good, isn't it? Is it? Emma's voice cracked. Because it means she didn't matter as much as I thought. It means their summer was just a summer. Something he got over. No. Lucas's voice was firm. It means their summer was exactly what it needed to be. It shaped him. Then it let him go. That's not nothing, Emma. That's everything. Emma pressed her free hand to her mouth. I tried to breathe. Talk to me, Lucas said quietly. What's really going on? I don't know. I thought if Bobby had stayed broken, it would mean Rose chose wrong. But if he moved on, it means she didn't matter. And I can't, her breath hitched. I can't make either of those things mean she made the right choice. Because there is no right choice, Lucas said. There's just the choice she made. And then the life she lived afterwards. Both of them lived. That's what matters. But what if Emma stopped? Her throat was too tight. What if what? What if I stay and it doesn't work and I realize I gave up everything for nothing? Silence on the other end. Heavy. Then Lucas, careful, is that what you think staying is? Giving up everything? I don't know what it is. Emma. His voice had an edge now. Are you calling because you found Bobby? Or are you calling because you're looking for an excuse to run? The question hit like a slap. I'm not. Yes, you are. Not angry. Just honest. You're scared. So you're looking for proof that Rose made the wrong choice. Or the right one. Or any choice that tells you what you should do. But Rose can't tell you that. Neither can Bobby. Neither can I. Emma's chest was heaving. Then what am I supposed to do? Choose. Lucas's voice softened.
Stop waiting for
Choose
permission
something,
or proof
anything,
or
or a guarantee it'll work out. Just choose. What if I choose wrong? Then you'll survive. That's what people do. Emma closed her eyes. Felt tears slip down her face. I'm terrified. I know. I want to stay. But I don't know if I can. If I'm strong enough. If I won't just bolt the first time it gets hard. Maybe you will, Lucas said quietly. But maybe you won't. And I'd rather find out than watch you leave because you're too scared to try. Emma opened her eyes. Stared at the laptop. Robert's photograph. At the life he'd lived after letting Rose go. He was happy, she whispered. Without her. Yeah. And she was happy without him. Both things are true. Then what does that mean? It means love doesn't have to destroy you to matter. It means Lucas paused. She heard him exhale. It means you get to choose your own story. Not Rose's. Not Bobby's. Yours. Emma was quiet for a long time. Then, I'm staying. You sure? No. Her voice shook. But I'm staying anyway. She heard Lucas's breath catch. Okay. Come here. Tomorrow. Or now. Or whenever you can. Just come here. Lucas. I'm not good at this over the phone. I need to see you. Emma looked at the clock. 3:47 in the morning. Now, if you want. She shouldn't. I should sleep. Should process. Should do anything except show up at his door in the middle of the night desperate and unraveling. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. She hung up. Changed into real clothes with shaking hands. Grabbed her keys. Drove through empty streets to heart and soul. Lucas was waiting outside. The cafe was dark except for one light in the kitchen. He looked at her. Really looked. Then pulled her into his arms. Sobbed into his chest whilst he held her tight, grounding, real. He was happy, she choked out. He moved on and she stayed and they both lived and it didn't destroy either of them. I know. So why does it hurt? Lucas pulled back. Cupped her face in his hands. Because you wanted her to matter more than she did. You wanted their love to be so big it couldn't be survived. Because if it was, then your love could be too. Then choosing love wouldn't be terrifying. Emma stared at him. How do you? Because I want the same thing. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I want you to stay so badly it scares me. And I keep telling you it's fine if you leave because I'm terrified that if I ask you to stay, you'll realize what you're giving up and run. Her breath caught. Lucas. So I'm asking. His voice was rough. Raw. Stay. Not because you're scared of leaving. Not because Rose did or didn't. Because you want to. Because this, he gestured between them. Because this is worth trying. Emma looked at him. At the vulnerability in his expression. At the fear and hope tangled together. I want to, she whispered. I'm just terrified. I know. So am I. Then how do we? We choose anyway. Lucas kissed her forehead. We choose and we see what happens. That's all anyone can do. Emma closed her eyes. I felt his warmth. His steadiness. His honesty. She knew herself better than I knew myself. Rose had known. I had chosen. Had lived. Emma could do the same. Okay, she said. I'm staying. You sure? No. But I'm doing it anyway. Lucas smiled. Kissed her fierce, desperate, relieved. When they broke apart, Lucas said,
Emma was breathless.
I'll make coffee. We'll talk. Or not talk. Whatever you need. Emma nodded. Let him lead her into the dark cafe. They sat in the kitchen. I drank coffee at 4 in the morning. Emma showed him Bobby's photograph. Played him the interview. Watched Lucas listen with that careful attention he gave everything. He had a good life, Lucas said finally. Yeah. So did Rose. Yeah. So do you get to. Emma looked at him. At the certainty in his expression. At the man who'd shown up at her door with a casserole and stayed through every messy moment since. I want to finish the cookbook, she said. All of it. Every recipe. Then we'll finish it. I want to fix the garden properly. Plant new things. I'll help. I want to figure out who I am when I'm not running. Lucas reached across the table. Took her hand. Then stay. And we'll figure it out together. Emma squeezed his fingers. Felt something in her chest settle. Not certainty. Not calm. Just choice. Okay, she whispered. Okay. They sat in the dark cafe until dawn broke. Until the sky turned gray, then gold. Until Emma felt steady enough to drive home. At the door, Lucas kissed her again. Soft. Sure. See you tomorrow, he asked. Yeah, tomorrow. Emma drove back to the cottage as the sun rose. Let herself in. I looked at the laptop, still open on the kitchen table. Robert's photograph stared back at her. Happy. Whole. Grateful. Emma closed the laptop. I looked at the cookbook. The recipes are still waiting.
Rose had chosen
She was
to stay.
building with her own hands.
Bobby
Bobby had chosen to leave. Both had lived full lives. Now Emma got to choose her own. And for the first time, she thought she might actually know what that meant. They'd been avoiding it for a week. Emma would open the cookbook each evening, Lucas at her side, and they'd turn pages past the recipe for a perfect day like it wasn't there. Made coq au vin instead. Made beef bourguignon. Made tarte tatin and raspberry fool and every French recipe Rose had copied down in the summer of 1965. But eventually, they ran out of other options. Monday evening. Emma sat at Rose's kitchen table with the cookbook open to the page she'd read 100 times. Lucas stood at the counter, slicing bread he'd brought from the cafe. We should make it, he said without looking up. Emma stared at the recipe. At Rose's careful handwriting. At the crossed-out ingredient that had haunted her since she'd first found this book. What if it doesn't work, she asked. It's a recipe, not a spell. It'll work. That's not what I mean. Lucas set down the knife. I turned to look at her. What do you mean? Emma traced the words on the page. Recipe for a perfect day. What if we make it and it's just ordinary? What if there's no revelation? What if the missing ingredient is something stupid like salt, and this whole thing has been me projecting meaning onto my dead grandmother's cookbook? Then it's salt, Lucas said. And we'll still eat it. Emma looked at him. At the steadiness in his expression. At the man who'd shown up every evening for a week to help her cook through a dead woman's recipes without once asking what the point was. Okay, she said. Let's make it. Lucas pulled the cookbook toward him. Read through the ingredient list. Fresh bread. Butter. Honey. Strawberries. Cream. Chocolate. Herbs from the garden. He paused. That's all very Rose. Simple things, Emma said. She always said the best meals didn't need to be complicated. Lucas started gathering ingredients. Emma watched him move through her kitchen now, with easy familiarity. He knew where she kept things. Knew how she liked her tea. Knew when to talk and when to let silence sit. They'd fallen into this. Morning coffee at heart and soul, Emma bringing him new ideas for the menu. Evenings here, cooking through Rose's recipes, talking about everything and nothing. Kisses in between, careful still, tentative, but growing bolder. Emma hadn't called her old firm. Hadn't applied for new jobs. Hadn't made any plans beyond next week's recipes. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like breathing. Lucas set the ingredients on the table. Right. We have everything except, he tapped the crossed outline. This. Emma leaned closer. She'd tried everything, holding the page up to light, tilting it at different angles, using her phone's flashlight. The words underneath were illegible. Just a dark smudge where Rose had scribbled them out. "I've tried," she said. "I can't read it. Let me try." Lucas pulled the cookbook toward him, studied the page, tilted it, held it up to the window where the late afternoon sun slanted through. "Anything?" Emma asked. "Maybe." He squinted. "There's something here. It's just wait." He pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, held it at an angle beneath the page. The paper glowed, and in the glow, beneath the heavy dark scribbles, Emma saw the faintest impression of letters. Ghosts of words written and then tried to be erased. Lucas's voice was quiet. "Emma, it's not crossed out." "What?" "It's not crossed out. It's just faded." The pen she used, it bled through. But she didn't scribble over it. She wrote over it. "I tried to cover it up." He tilted the page. "Look." Emma looked. And in the light, she saw it. Faint. Nearly invisible. But there. Someone to share it with. The kitchen went silent except for the sound of Emma's breathing.
That's the ingredient
Someone to share
she
it
couldn't
with,
find,
she whispered. Lucas set down the phone. I looked at her. I couldn't find it. Choose not to use it. Emma stared at the words. At Rose's handwriting, younger here, more hopeful. Before Bobby left. Before the choice that would define everything after. She wrote this recipe the summer she met Bobby, Emma said slowly. The summer she fell in love. And the ingredient for a perfect day was someone to share it with. And then he left. And then he left. Emma's throat was tight. And she crossed it out. Because she didn't have him anymore. Because she'd chosen John instead. Because she stopped. Started again. Because the recipe didn't work without that ingredient. So she tried to erase it. Lucas was quiet. His hand found hers across the table. But she couldn't erase it. It's still there. Just covered up. Emma looked at their joined hands. The cookbook opens between them. At the recipe for a perfect day that Rose had written in the first flush of love, and then spent 60 years trying to forget. What if we make it? She asked quietly. What if we use that ingredient? Lucas's thumb traced circles on her wrist. Then we use it. Lucas. Emma. He squeezed her hand. Make the recipe. We're here. We're together. Let's see what happens. She wanted to argue. Wanted to say it was too much pressure, too loaded, too. But Lucas was looking at her with those steady eyes. And the sun was setting through the window. And the garden outside was full of roses they'd planted together. Okay, she said. Okay. They made it together. Lucas sliced the bread, thick slices from the sourdough he'd baked that morning. Emma whipped cream until it formed soft peaks. They washed strawberries, dried them carefully, sliced them into a bowl. Lucas shaved chocolate from a dark bar, thin curls that looked almost too perfect to eat. Emma went to the garden, came back with basil and mint and tiny wild strawberries she'd found growing near the fence. No music. Just the sounds of the kitchen, knife on cutting board, whisk and bowl, the soft rustle of herbs being stripped from stems. Emma assembled it all on a tray. Bread with honey butter. Strawberries with cream and chocolate. Fresh herbs scattered over everything. 2 glasses of water from the tap, because Rose's note said cold water from the well, and there was no well anymore, but there was this, and it was good enough. Lucas carried the tray outside to the porch. The sun was setting, painting the garden gold. They sat on the steps where they'd read Bobby's letters, where Emma had sobbed, where Lucas had held her together. Emma picked up a piece of bread. Bit into it. Honey and butter and the slight sourness of good sourdough. It tasted like summer. Like Rose's kitchen. Like home. This is perfect, she said quietly. Lucas took a strawberry. Ate it. Smiled. Yeah, it is. They ate slowly. Shared the tray between them. The bread disappeared. The strawberries. The cream. They passed the glasses of water back and forth without thinking about it. The sun sank lower. The garden went soft and golden. Birds settled into the trees. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. The world continued, ordinary and beautiful. Emma set down her glass. I looked at Lucas. This is it, she said. This is a perfect day. Lucas turned to her. Yeah. Her voice was steady. Sure. Because you're here. Something shifted in Lucas's expression. Went soft. He reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Where else would I be? Emma didn't know how to answer that. So she kissed him instead. He tasted like strawberries and chocolate. His hand cupped the back of her head, gentle, grounding. Emma leaned into him, into the possibility of something she was still too scared to name. The sun had set. The garden was twilight blue. Stars were starting to appear. I need to tell you something, Emma said. Lucas's hand was still in her hair. Okay. I'm terrified. The words came out in a rush. I'm terrified this won't last. That I'll wake up one day and realize I've made the same mistake Rose did, chose the safe thing, the small thing, the thing that doesn't ask too much. Or worse, that I chose wrong and wasted your time and hurt you and… Emma. Lucas pulled back enough to look at her. You're not wasting my time. But what if? No. His voice was firm. No what ifs. Not tonight. Tonight we had a perfect day. And it worked. That's enough. Is it? It has to be. Lucas's thumb traced her jaw. Because if we start asking for guarantees, we'll never do anything. Rose taught you that. Bobby taught you that. They didn't get guarantees. They just got the time they had. Emma stared at him. At the conviction in his face. At the man who'd chosen to stay in this small town when he could have gone to New York. Who'd chosen to help her when he had no reason to. Who was choosing her right now without asking for promises she couldn't make. I want this, she whispered. I want you. I want this life. I'm just scared. I know. So am I. Lucas kissed her forehead. But I'm doing it anyway. That's what bravery looks like. Emma closed her eyes. I felt his warmth. His steadiness. The solid reality of him beside her in Rose's garden on a perfect evening at the end of a perfect day. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'm staying. Properly. Not just for now. For, she opened her eyes. Met him. For as long as it works. For as long as we work. Lucas's smile was slow. Relieved.
He kissed
Beautiful.
her again. That's all
Deeper this time. Emma's hands came up to his chest, felt his heartbeat under her palms, steady, real, alive. When they finally broke apart, full darkness had fallen. The stars were out. The cottage windows glowed warm behind them. We should go in, Lucas said. It's getting cold. Not yet. Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. Just not yet. Okay. His arm came around her. Not yet. They sat like that whilst the night deepened. The tray sat empty between them. The recipe for a perfect day had been made, eaten, lived. And somewhere, in some impossible way, Emma thought Rose might be satisfied. Not because Emma had chosen to stay. Not because she'd found love. Not because anything had been fixed or resolved. But because Emma had finally done what Rose had done 60 years ago, looked at her options, felt the weight of them, and chose anyway. Chosen knowing it might not work. Knowing it might hurt. Knowing there were no guarantees. But choosing anyway. Because that's what love requires. What life requires. Not certainty. Just courage. Emma looked at the cookbook sitting on the porch beside them. At the recipe they'd finally completed. At the words that had been hidden for 60 years. Someone to share it with. Rose had written that in 1965. Had crossed it out when Bobby left. Had tried to convince herself it wasn't necessary. That she could have perfect days alone. That the ingredient didn't matter. But it did matter. Emma understood that now. Not because you needed someone to be happy. But because choosing to share your life with someone, choosing them deliberately, consciously, with full knowledge of the risk, that was the ingredient that turned ordinary days with John. Perfect ones. Had chosen him after Bobby left. And maybe it hadn't been passionate. Maybe it hadn't been the love story everyone dreams of. But it had been real. And it had been hers. And she'd made it work. Now Emma got to do the same. Thank you, she said quietly. Lucas stirred. For what? For being here. For helping me finish the cookbook. For, she gestured helplessly. For being the ingredient I didn't know I needed. Lucas was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed soft, warm, real. That's the most Emma thing you've ever said. Is it terrible? No. He kissed the top of her head. It's perfect. They sat on the porch until the cold drove them inside. Washed the tray together. put away the cookbook. Made tea they drank standing at the counter, shoulders touching. When Lucas finally left, he kissed her at the door like he had every night that week. Like he'd do tomorrow. Like this was the beginning of something, not the end. Emma watched him walk down the path. I watched his taillights disappear around the corner. Then she went back inside. I looked at the cookbook sitting on the table. At the cottage that was slowly becoming hers. She was building with her own hands. Someone to share it with. The ingredient Rose couldn't find. The ingredient Emma had stumbled into without meaning to, not because Lucas completed her. Not because she needed him to be whole. But because choosing to build a life together, choosing to share the perfect days and the imperfect ones, that was the thing that made everything else
Carried it
matter. Upstairs. Set it on the shelf beside Rose's bed, her bed now. Tomorrow she'd start planning the garden properly. I would call her mother and tell her about staying. Would figure out what came next. But tonight, she'd had a perfect day. And it worked. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 3 months later, Emma still woke early. Not from anxiety anymore. Just a habit. The cottage was quiet at dawn, just birdsong and the creak of old floorboards and the sound of her own breathing. She'd converted Rose's front room into a workspace. Desk by the window. Laptop. Files. A bookshelf slowly filling with things that were hers. She was freelancing now, copywriting mostly, for small businesses that didn't demand her soul. It paid enough. It let her sleep. More importantly, it let her stay. Lucas still brought coffee most mornings. They'd drink it in the garden, watching the roses Emma had planted come into bloom. Then he'd leave for the cafe and Emma would work until noon, words coming easier than they had in years. She was writing other things too. Not just copy. Essays. Fragments. Nothing she'd shown anyone yet. But they were there, accumulating, waiting. Today was Saturday. No work. Just the gathering she'd been planning for weeks. Emma cleaned the cottage, not much, it stayed tidy now, and set out plates Rose had kept wrapped in newspaper for 40 years. Good china. The kind you saved for special occasions. Lucas arrived at 4 with trays from the cafe. Sandwiches. Scones. And the dessert he'd added to the menu 2 months ago, Rose's legacy tart. Strawberries and cream in buttery pastry. The recipe from the cookbook, perfected. It's sold out every day. Your Grand's more popular dead than most people are alive, Lucas had said when Emma had seen the menu. She'd laughed because it was true and because Rose would have driven by a carer. He'd brought photographs, Rose as a girl, the town in the 60s, Sullivan's Jazz Lounge in its heyday. Emma helped him to the best chair, and he settled in like a king holding court. Then Emma's mother. Emma had called her 6 weeks ago. A stilted conversation at first, years of distance between them, years of Emma being too busy, too important, too London to come home. But they'd talked. Really talked. And Sarah Clark had cried and Emma had cried and they'd agreed to try. Now Sarah stood in the doorway of Rose's cottage, Emma's cottage, and her eyes were bright. It looks just like I remember, she said quietly. But different. Yours. Come in, Emma said. Please. They embraced, awkward still, but warmer than before. Sarah brought flowers from her own garden. Emma put them in water, set them on the table. A few others arrived. Neighbors Emma had met whilst fixing the garden. A woman from the village shop who'd known Rose. Lucas's father recovered now, smiling and loud. The cottage filled with voices, with warmth, with life. Emma stood in the kitchen doorway and watched. These people are in Rose's space. In her space. Talking, laughing, eating Rose's recipes made by Lucas's hands. Lucas found her there. Slipped an arm around her waist. Are you all right? He asked. Yeah. Emma leaned into him. Just taking it in. It's a good turnout. Rose would have liked it. She would have. Lucas kissed her temple. You ready? Emma nodded. Went to the kitchen table. Picked up the cookbook. The room quieted as she carried it to the center of the group. Set it down where everyone could see. I wanted to show you all something, Emma said. Her voice was steady. Steadier than she'd expected. This cookbook belonged to my grandmother. I found it when I came back here after she died. And she stopped. Started again. It changed everything. She opened it carefully. Showed them
Notes in
Rose's
the
handwriting.
margins.
The
The
story of a
recipes.
woman who'd loved deeply, chosen carefully, lived fully. Mr. Hart leaned forward, eyes bright. That's Rose's hand. I'd know it anywhere. It is. Emma turned pages. Showed them the strawberry tart. The soufflé. The apple crumbled. Each one with its story, its grief, its small joy preserved in ink. Then she turned to the last page. The recipe for a perfect day. And below Rose's original note, in Emma's own handwriting. Recipe for a perfect day, final ingredient, someone to share it with. Made with Lucas, who taught me that staying can be the bravest choice. Thank you, Grandma, for showing me that all kinds of love are real. That passion and steadiness aren't opposites. That you can make a choice and live it and carry what you lost without letting it destroy you. I understand now. You weren't settling. You were choosing. And I'm choosing too. With love and gratitude, EC, October 2024. The room was silent. Emma looked up. Her mother had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Emma, Sarah whispered. She'd be so proud of you. Emma's throat tightened. I don't know about that. I do. Sarah came forward. I touched the cookbook. For staying. For finding this. Her voice broke. To understand her. I never did. I was angry she'd never left this town. Never wanted more. But you see it differently. She did want more, Emma said quietly. She just defined it differently than we do. She wanted roots. She wanted a garden. She wanted a life she could build with her own hands. That is more. Just not the kind we're taught to want.
Emma turned
Sarah
another
nodded.
page. Couldn't
Showed them the
speak.
photographs, Rose and Bobby dancing, young and alive. And next to it, carefully placed, a new photograph. Emma and Lucas on the cottage porch, taken by Mr. Hart one evening when he'd visited. They weren't looking at the camera. They were looking at each other. Laughing at something. Caught mid-moment, real and unposed. 2 photographs. 2 generations. 2 love stories with completely different endings. Both of them are true. Lucas squeezed Emma's hand. Mr. Hart smiled. Sarah wiped her eyes. I think she knew I'd find it, Emma said. The cookbook. I think she left it where I'd look. In the kitchen, in the house, in this life she'd built. She knew I'd come back eventually. That I'd need to. She always knew things, Mr. Hart said. Your Gran. She was quietly wise like that. Emma closed the cookbook carefully. Set it on the mantel where everyone could see it. Then Lucas put on music. Old jazz, a vinyl record he'd found at a charity shop. The kind of music Bobby Sullivan would have played in 1965. Saxophone and piano and bass, all winding together into something that felt like summer and loss and hope. People started talking again. Eating. Laughing. The cottage filled with the warmth of living, not the weight of grief. Lucas held out his hand. Dance with me. Emma hesitated. Here? Now. Why not? There's no room. There's enough room. Lucas pulled her into the kitchen. Into the space between the table and the counter where Emma had read Rose's notes, where they'd made soufflé and tart and crumble
Emma
and
let
every
him lead.
recipe that
They
they
swayed
swayed
them
together, barely moving, just holding each other whilst the music played and the cottage hummed with voices. I'm home, Emma whispered. She hadn't meant to say it aloud. But it came out anyway, small and true. Lucas's arms tightened around her. Yeah, you are. Emma closed her eyes. I felt the solidity of him. The warmth of the cottage around them. The life she'd built in 3 months, imperfect, uncertain, but hers. She'd spent so long running. From failure. From mediocrity. From the fear that she'd waste her life on the wrong things. And she'd ended up here, in a cottage in a town she'd tried to leave behind, dancing in the kitchen with a man who'd taught her that staying could be brave. Rose had known. Had left the cookbook like a breadcrumb trail. Had trusted that Emma would find it when she was ready. When she was broken enough to listen. Thank you, Emma murmured. Lucas pulled back slightly. For what? For not asking me to be sure. For letting me figure it out. Emma. Lucas's hand came up to her face. I'm still not asking you to be sure. I'm just glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here too. She meant it. Fully. For the first time since arriving, the words didn't feel weighted with doubt. They danced through the song. Through the next one. Around them, the cottage breathed with life, Lucas's grandfather telling stories, Emma's mother laughing at something, neighbors passing plates and pouring wine. This was what Rose had wanted. Not perfection. Just this. Life continues. Love matters. Choices being made, Emma stepped back. I looked at Lucas. At this man who'd shown up with a casserole and stayed through every messy moment. Who'd taught her to make pastry and let her cry and kissed her like she was worth the risk. I love you, she said. Simple. Clear. True. Lucas's expression went soft. I know. That's all you're going to say? I love you too. Obviously. He smiled. But I've known for weeks. I was waiting for you to catch up. Emma laughed. Kissed him. Felt the warmth of it settle in her chest. Around them, life continued. Mr. Hart called for more tea. Sarah asked to see the garden. Neighbors discussed the weather, the town, the small ordinary things that made up a life. Emma looked at the cookbook on the mantel. At Rose's handwriting and her own, side by side. Past and future. Loss and choice and the courage to keep living. Rose hadn't had a perfect life. Hadn't made perfect choices. But she'd made her choices. And she'd lived them without apology. Now Emma was doing the same. Not because she was certain it would work. Not because she'd stopped being scared. But because she'd finally understood what Rose had been trying to teach her. Love wasn't about guarantees. It was about showing up. About choosing someone and letting them choose you back. About building something real with your own hands.
Rose had done that
even
with
when
John.
You couldn't see the
With
ending.
this
cottage. With her garden and her recipes and her quiet, steady life. Emma was doing it with Lucas. With this town. With the work that mattered and the people she'd let in and the terrifying, beautiful act of staying. Outside, the sun was setting. The garden glowed gold. The roses Emma had planted were blooming, not perfectly, some of them struggling, but growing nonetheless. Inside, the cottage hummed with warmth. With laughter. With the sound of people living. And on the mantel, the cookbook sat open to Emma's note. Thank you, Grandma, for showing me that all kinds of love are real. Rose's handwriting above. Emma's below. 2 women, 60 years apart, both choosing to stay. Both finding love in the quiet spaces. Both learned that bravery looked different than they'd imagined. Emma stood in the kitchen doorway with Lucas's hand in hers and felt, for the first time in years, exactly where she was supposed to be. Not because it was perfect. Not because it was easy. But because it was hers. And that finally was enough.